So my name is Eleri Wynne. I come from the UK. I come from Wales, in fact. And I am a teacher. I have been in China since 1992, so that's just over 30 years. And I will soon be 70 years of age, at the beginning of next year. Yeah, ever since I was young, I enjoyed reading anything I could find about China. And so when I first arrived, it was hard to tell what my first impressions were. I just wanted to see whether the impressions I had in my brain, whether they matched up with reality in China. But of course, real life and impressions are not the same. Not a contradiction, but they're just a different, because when you actually see something in real life, it becomes alive. So it's really the people that make China what it is. And from the very beginning, Chinese people were very warm, very welcoming, and really wanted me to feel at home in China. Yes, from the very beginning I wanted to learn Chinese, because I think you have to be able to speak the language of the place where you live in order to get to know the people and in order to be able to communicate with them. So really my Chinese I learned bit by bit. First of all, maybe students helping me to learn Chinese. And maybe I proceeded like that for the first maybe 4 years in China. And then after that, I decided to take some time out and actually study at the Northwestern Minorities University in Lanzhou to actually take lessons and sort of have some time when I could just use the whole time learning Chinese. Why I devote myself to education in China is because I am a teacher and that's what I do best. And what I like about teaching is that it involves communicating with people, and I think that's the best way of not only to help students, children in particular, but it's something that everybody needs. We all need education in life. So I think dedicating yourself to education means that you can help children and young people master skills that they're going to use for their whole life. I think it's a very rewarding thing, and I'm very thankful that I am a teacher, because it has made my life so much richer. I think I first realized that English standards in the countryside were not the same as in the cities. It was when I was a teacher in Lanzhou, because a lot of my students came originally from this countryside, and even though they worked very hard, they studied very, very hard, but they could never match the level of the students that came from the city, especially as concerns speaking and listening. One example. So one of my students, this is when I was in Lanzhou, he was a postgraduate student, and he worked very, very hard. But when he was in middle school, his teacher, his English teacher, could not speak English, could not pronounce English words. So he told me that the way he was taught words by this English teacher was in this way: T-A-B-L-E, draw them. T-R-A-C-T-O-R, tolaji. And so, of course, the students never heard the words pronounced, so it was not surprising that the listening and pronunciation of such students was a bit problematic. Even more interesting, when I was my first year in Xi'an, there was a student there, and he was even older. I think at that time he must have been in his late 40s, if not in his early 50s, and he had never heard English spoken. Now, we're going back to the early 90s, and prior to that, he'd never heard it spoken, and so he made up his own pronunciation. He made it up. He made a system, but unfortunately it didn't correspond to the way English is pronounced, so he had a great difficulty understanding English when it was spoken. But he had worked ever so hard. These are two examples. Helping children in rural areas, this was not a difficult thing for me to do, because this is what I always wanted to do. Ever since the early 90s, I had realized what the problem was, and really, I guess I was waiting all along for an opportunity to be able to do something about it, trying to think of a way, what could we do to help children in the countryside. And I had the idea of writing a book, and then friends helped me find a way to get this book to schools in the countryside. And so the book was published and was able to go to many places and donate the book to children in the countryside, not only in Shandong, but in Inner Mongolia, in Henan, Hunan. We're just always really looking for an opportunity. I suppose one memorable thing was being able to put on a play with the children in Wutingjian Primary School in the Linqiu area in Shandong. Because anytime friends asked me about this, they would say to me, of course you did the play in Chinese. And I would say, well, why would I, of all people, help them to produce a play in Chinese? Of course it's in English that we did it. And people found it difficult to believe that they had been able to do this. But yeah, so children in the countryside, they're just as clever as children in the cities. They just lack the opportunities. Another memorable thing is one little girl who was extremely, extremely shy. She would not even talk to her class teacher. But the first time I taught her class, she came out with some friends with a note that she had written me and asking me, could I please stay, because she loved me and she just wanted me to be frequently with them. Her class teacher couldn't understand what had happened, and neither could I, but something must have happened during that class which caused her to be able to reach out and want to communicate with people. So yeah, it was a real privilege just to be there when that happened. Really, I think is probably a lack of good teachers. What you often find is that if you find a good English teacher in a countryside school, you can be sure in a year's time they will not be there. They will have been moved to a better school in the county town, sometimes even in the city. And this has happened a number of times. So I think this doesn't help. I think this is changing slowly. Now, of course, conditions have improved a lot in countryside schools. Lots of schools now have new buildings, new equipment, so it's a much more comfortable environment for children in the countryside. But I think maybe the teaching, the education level will sort of take time to reach the same level as in the countryside. I mean, I've noticed by looking on TV that some universities in Beijing are able to connect through the internet with countryside schools and help teachers in that way. And I think that's a wonderful way of going. So they just need better teachers. So whatever way can be found to bring in a better level of teaching, whether it's through the internet or through native speakers going, or through encouraging Chinese teachers to stay in the countryside, then I think all of these will bit by bit help. But I think probably the internet is a good option, and that we need to use it more because it's readily available and can reach all over the countryside. Everybody everywhere is online buying stuff on Taobao, so we should be able to use the same method to bring better education to children. But then there's another problem there too, because some of these children, their parents are working in the big cities, so if they're at home with grandma and grandpa, often grandma and grandpa can't use the most recent technology. So maybe it requires the schools to be able to link to the internet to bringing better English education. I think the meaning of my career, building bridges. I think a person can be a bridge, especially people who can cross from one culture into another, because you need somebody that can touch both sides. But I think some Chinese teachers will be able to do this too. I think basically I just love people, and in particular I love children, and I just want to do all I can to help them, and maybe I express my career in that way. My plans for the future is to stay in China for, if I'm allowed to do so, I'll stay for the rest of my life, but I will stay as long as possible and seek for more opportunities to go to the countryside and to help children in the countryside.